Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hearing News. So good to be back with you. And Chewie, I don't think we had you on Thursday, so we haven't seen you for nearly a week.
No, I've been gone for ages. It is the Fringe Festival down here in Dunedin at the moment. I've been trying to see as much comedy and comedy-related acts as I can. I've been very tired, wee bunny. I've been seeing like 2 or 3 shows a night. Basically for a week.
Highlights.
Oh, saw Eli Mathewson last night. He was really good. I saw a show called what was it called? I forget the actual name of it. I have to look it up. But it was all about PowerPoint, and I'm not selling it really good almost instantly. I know that, but God, I laughed. It was so much fun.
Excellent.
I'll find the show and I'll mention it again later.
Very good. Yeah, no, I was communicating with Eli about Let's Talk Funny, and I think David Corios is going to be in Dunedin in the next couple of days, and might be doing one with him on Saturday morning, a podcast with him. So yeah, it's fun. And also Donna Brookbanks, I've been talking to her as well. We might be getting her
she's good
onto the conversation. So yeah, very, very good. Good to have you back, and good to be back with you. This is the only night we've got Chewie with us on the podcast, because I keep calling this a podcast. It feels weird when it's a live stream. Because it's a live stream.
I've always called it a podcast.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it? Because Chewie is doing more stuff with the Dunedin Fringe, and that is all good. So enjoy Chewie tonight, people. Give him as much love as you can, and we will we will cherish him for tonight and tonight only. Cherish
every night.
Cherish our cherub for one little night. Now, tonight's an interesting show, yeah? There's a little bit of a journey tonight that we're going to have a look at, and I'm going to sort of mea culpa some honest truths about myself to do with Posie Parker and the idea of free speech versus hate speech. There's a flip side to this conversation as well. I don't know if you've heard this other story, Chewie, but there was this story coming out of, I think, the West Coast, where there was a prize pool offered for an ultra marathon distance race. Have you heard this story?
Yes, no, I did read that story.
I think it's really interesting to think through, because the conversation around Posie Parker is going to be steeped in the idea of the saying, trans women are women, and trans women should be able to compete against women because men and women are competing at a similar level. But then there's this other story that came out right beside this, which is this group are being called sexist because they offered an $8,000 or a $10,000 prize, and there's complaints being made that men will dominate it, so it's sexist. In other words, in this argument, there's this massive separation of men and women. And in these other arguments we're going to have, there's this massive inclusion of men and women. So it's just like I find it quite fascinating to look at society and see how we're using language and talking, because even though they're not talking about the same thing, the roots of those two conversations seem to be contrary of one another. And I'm keen to kind of nut it out and see what we're talking about and see if we can figure it all out. And on top of that, of course, one more funny and happy little measurement for Chewie to win his so-called bet with Mr. Luxon in the polls today, which we'll talk about.
He's not coming back.
We'll
talk about from COVID.
We'll talk about that first. But one news from the Brittenden household. Guess what's in our house right now?
What's that? The weather.
COVID.
Oh, you got COVID in your
house. In the house.
Oh. So who's got duct taped into their bedroom then?
Yeah, one of the teenagers has tested positive today, and it's a real bastard, because here in Dunedin, for those of you who are outside, it's been a brilliant 3 months. There's been the odd rainy day, the odd cooler day, but we've had, and for Dunedin, this is pleasant. We've had sort of 18 to 21, 22, 23, almost for the last 2 months straight. The day that one of my teenagers tests positive for COVID, it's been between 10 and 12 degrees all day, and raining and windy. And so what we've been doing is obviously a little bit of isolated to the room, and then they need to come out and use the bathroom or whatever. So they put a mask on and they come out and they go out the front door, and they go around the side of the house and they go to the laundry at the back. But then we leave the doors open to let the place air out. And it's 10 degrees at the moment. So the thing about it is we're just going, God, if this only could have happened like last week, if this had happened last week, it would have been like a beautiful, fine 21-degree day. All the doors could have been open, not a problem. And it just makes you think that when they talk about, in summertime, COVID numbers and that kind of stuff go down, part of it is simply that it's warmer. You leave all the doors open. There's less kind of recirculating air from people breathing. And we were just talking tonight. Imagine if it was June and it was 2 degrees outside and this is happening. So you can see why in those colder months, the numbers, I guess, for any kind of viral infection go up because no one wants to air the house out. I get it. So, yeah. So hopefully we've caught it in time. She was testing negative last night and she tested positive this morning before she saw anyone. And she's been in her room all day other than a few toilet trips. And she's obviously full up on treats from the supermarket at the moment, and it's basically going, "Yeah, I'm fine. Dad. I could have gone to school today." Like it's not hitting her at all. Really, the dirty little. But yeah. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I have a feeling that my 14-year-old may also get it because it seems that maybe this has been passed around at a particular event they were both at. So fingers crossed. We shall see. Everyone else is good. And it's really interesting, Chewie. I don't know if you found this, but since having COVID, I'm not that I was worried about COVID, but I was more sensitive to COVID. And now I'm just like, no, we'll figure it out. Muddle through. Not a big deal. Let's move on. It feels much more pragmatic now than it felt like it would before one had it. I don't know if you experienced that.
I guess. I mean, I really had in my mind before I got it that I'd love to get through this whole thing without getting it.
Ideally.
Whether that was practical or not, I guess I'll never know. But I don't want round 2. I know people that have had it 3 times, and I'm just nah, I don't want. I'm still wearing a mask on public transport. I'm still doing distancing wherever I can. I've had a really nasty cold.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, this better not be COVID. Not again.
Oh yeah, but it wasn't, was it?
No, it was just cold. Just a bad cold.
Hey, thanks for coming back and joining us again. By the way, it was Otago Anniversary Day yesterday. If you didn't get the memo, people, the reason we weren't here was Otago Anniversary Day. Chewie was doing stuff with the Dunedin Fringe, and I spent some time with the whānau because everyone had a day off. So I was like, well, I'm going to have a day off and do something in the evening with the kids and my partner. So that's why we weren't here yesterday. But we're back today, and of course, we always want to say a big thanks to all our patrons who have joined us on this journey we are on. A huge thank you to you guys for coming on board and being a part of what we do. If you're interested in being a part of what we do, kind of behind the scenes and helping us do bits and pieces and, pay the odd bill, like we talk about without trying to guilt anybody, this software that we use costs $100 a month, so there's costs that are associated with what we do. So any little bit does genuinely help. And thank you for coming on board with your $5 or your $8 or your $25 or your $100, whatever you choose to do per month. We genuinely appreciate it. And if you want to be involved, patreon.com/big hairy news. Now, I've seen you've opened up a window there. Do we need to do something else before we get going?
Yeah, just before we crack in, just before we went to air, I just saw some news. Obviously, I'm a keen follower of what's going on in Ukraine. And on Twitter, I've been following a couple of Kiwi volunteers in the International Legion over there.
The soldier news?
Yeah. And unfortunately, one of our Kiwi volunteers died over there.
So it's confirmed. They're talking about a Kiwi soldier I saw going around the news. Is that what he was? Was he there soldiering?
Yes. Yeah. So this account that I'm following here, Kiwi in Ukraine, he's reporting it. He's in a different unit. But yeah, Kane Titai has died fighting. Here pictured on the right next to Dominic Bryce Eberlin, who was the first New Zealand volunteer to be killed in action in Ukraine. So now there's 2 confirmed Kiwis that have been killed in fighting there. Kane was in the Bakhmut area where there's been a lot of really brutal fighting. So yeah, I'm just blown away by people that will go from a very safe, comfortable country to go and fight for someone else for something that they believe in. But yeah, very, very sad news.
It is really sad news. Can I ask a really ignorant question that some people might find a bit insensitive? I genuinely want to know the answer, because I agree with you about people like, laying down their lives for others. It's an amazing to do. Is that what the New Zealand soldiers over there are doing, or is there some mercenary work where they're earning on? Just like no offense intended. I just actually want to know.
From the guys that I've been following on Twitter, no, they are volunteers.
Okay.
The International Legion is part of the Ukrainian military. They are paid by the Ukrainian government, the same pay that Ukrainian soldiers are paid. So yeah, they're not part of a mercenary organization. It's almost said this right from the start. It's almost like with the Spanish Civil War back before World War II. That just people have a cause that they've felt so strongly about, and they're like, well, I'm a trained soldier, I can't sit here and watch this in the news. And they make their way over there and they present themselves to the Ukrainian military and go, I want to fight for you.
Yeah.
Went through some training and put in a unit, and away they go. Very,
very sad news. I think since we last talked, Chewie, as well, there are international calls for Putin to be charged with crimes. So, I do feel like it's pretty fair to say that whilst obviously there are some geopolitical intricacies with this, no one's saying that there's 100% innocence on any one part, that Russia are in the wrong as the aggressors in the general scheme of things. So yeah, no disrespect intended by what I asked. It was a genuine question as to, because even if they were over there earning a fee and doing good work, it would still be sad news. So it's sad news, and they're not. So that's good to know. All right, let's get into this, shall we, Mr. Luxon? So Chewie, who does
is there another poll
every time I talk about it. National leader Christopher Luxon falls to new low in poll. Now, this is an interesting poll. The poll's called the Talbot Mills or something. Where is it? I'll read it. As I read it, it'll come. There we go. Talbot Mills poll, because it looks like he's still rated quite highly, but obviously polls to polls, you compare your Talbot Mills to another Talbot Mills to another Talbot Mills. So these numbers don't sound as terrible as that, but compared to the previous Talbot Mills poll, he's not doing too well. National leader Christopher Luxon, preferred prime minister polling, has fallen to a new low, hitting 23% in the latest Talbot Mills poll. This represents a fall of 4 points from last month's poll and 1 point lower than his prior worst performance, which was 24 in September and October last year. New Labour leader Christopher Hipkins continues to climb, hitting 39%, up 4 on the last poll. Now, I don't know too much about Talbot Mills, but I do know that they do the polling for the Labour Party and for commercial clients. Now, a lot of people talk about the courier polls being a right bias. I'm actually not saying that's truthful. I'm saying that's a perception. So I don't know whether these guys have a perception of having a left bias. I don't know, but this is not the end of the story, because I'll show you. So within the whole situation, Labour led the field with 37, up 4 points from last month, while National trailed on 34%, down 2. So that means in the last Talbot Mills, National was ahead of Labour, right? Because if they were up 4, that means they were on 33, and if they're down, so it was 36-33 to National in their last one. So just so we're clear. ACT rose 2 to 12, while the Greens fell 3 points to 8. Te Pāti Māori was on 3.2%, and New Zealand First was on 2.9%. Top rounded out the top of the smaller parties on 1.5%. So here's the party vote: 37, 34, 12, 8, 3.2, 2.9, 1.5. And here is the preferred prime minister: 39% up 4, 23% down 4. They also talked a little bit about the issues of climate change in this poll. This was not a poll for the Labour Party. It was a poll for a commercial client. It found that 61% of people believe climate change was caused by the effects of pollution from human activity, while 20% of people believe that it was caused by natural changes in the environment that are not due to human activity. So I think both of those are actually wrong. I don't think anyone is actually saying it's caused by pollution from human activity. I think that's a contributing factor to it. There can be some natural cycles, but that's the huge dump on top. That's the overloading. So maybe if what they're asking is, that seems to be the biggest percentage of it, fair, but I don't think anyone ever claims it's 100% man-made. It's man-made is contributing to it and worsening it, would be my understanding. Would that be your understanding, Chewie?
That's my feeling on it, but I also feel like questions around it are kind of pointless at this point.
Yeah.
It's just like it's happening, it's bad. Who cares how it started? Let's do something to take the heat out of it.
Agreed. 18% of people said they were unsure. People were also polled on whether they had confidence in the world's ability to handle climate change. 47% of the people were not confident. Even that's a bit confusing. The world's ability, are we saying the Earth's ability, or are we saying the people on the world, like the governments? Anyway,
I would read that as the
governments,
like the world governments, people,
Me
mankind.
too. 47% of people were not confident, 30% were unsure, and 16% were confident. So that's a pretty telling toll, right? So that's the poll overall. But what's important also to look at the national and Luxon part of this poll is what Spinoff has done. They've brought up the last 5 polls, and Labor now leads national across 5 polls. So now we're looking at the trends, right? Yeah. Even if I was asking that Talbot Mills poll, if it is left-leaning, and I'm not saying it is, I don't know, or the Courier poll is right-leaning, that's the accusations. But now if you pull the last 5 polls together, Labor's leading national in all of them. Across the 5 of the latest polls for which the results are published, Labor has now an edge over national. Talks about the Talbot Mills. The result, which draw on fieldwork across the first 9 days in March, suggests that Chris Hipkins' leadership has a significant impact on Labor's fortunes. In the Talbot Mills poll, national leader Christopher Luxon has fallen by 4 points in the preferred Prime Minister stakes to 23%, with Hipkins up 4 to 39%. The average of the 5 polls puts Labor on 35.9%, ahead of National on 34.3%, with ACT on 12.3%, the Greens 9.1%, to Party Māori on 2.6%. So here's the 5 polls. And you can see in all of them, Labor 38, 36, 36, 34, 37, 34, 35, 34, 33, 32, 35, 34. They're ahead on all of them. So you could absolutely say there is a trend now. The other thing that's interesting is the trend with ACT. 4 out of the 5 are all in double figures. One, two,
yep.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I don't like that.
4 out of the 5 are in double figures. You could equally say for the trend for the Greens that 3 out of the 5 are in single figures. So there are some trends there starting to look for multiple political parties. You'd have to say for Te Pāti Māori, all 5 are under 5%, but 3 of them are over 3. For New Zealand First, all 5 are under 4.5%, with their average being 2.9. And I mean, top doesn't matter. They're not going to be there anyway, so what it is. So some interesting results from that particular poll, but also some interesting trends coming out that Spinoff has pulled out to show us what's happening at the moment. Chewie, what's you thinking?
The ACT one is interesting, right? Because it's almost like that's traditionally national voters going, oh, national's not doing very well. I better put my vote into someone else.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I wonder if those guys just worked it out that if they voted national, they'd get there.
Yeah.
But they're pissed off with national somehow, whether they're as you said, too woke, or they're going, hey, Luxon's in a death spiral and I don't want to give him my vote.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I don't like ACT and as much as I don't like Seymour and everything he stands for and every breath he takes, he has run a pretty tight ship and has managed to keep the media away from 99% of his party, which is great because they're all insane.
Sorry, I just in my head sting. Every breath could not. Just jump straight in there. That's why I started laughing.
Yeah, now I can ruin it for you by saying, now imagine David Seymour after 3 drinks doing that at a karaoke. Terrible. It's a terrible imagination.
I think that always when it's within 1 or 2%, I always think margin of error, especially because 16 or 17% are undecided. So I do like the conversations we've had with sort of people who critique polls going, just remember, people, it's a snapshot of today. It doesn't actually mean anything when it comes to the election. When we didn't specifically go for what that means in the House for seats, because that's irrelevant. You know, polls aren't about projections. Polls are about looking at what the answer is today. So when you start to project seats in the House, it's sort of a nonsense. I mean, as we said last time, the only thing that does do is give you a real accurate percentage of what's happening today, because the seats in the House equate to, you know, how many of the votes i.e. all the top votes, wouldn't actually be included. That's what the seats in the House show, but not actually what the seats in the House are. So yeah, anyway, it's I'll say it again, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now. It's like the one thing it does show us, and the one thing the trends do show us, is game on. If nothing else, it shows us game on. So I'm not confident at all that the left will win, and I don't know if people on the right will be confident at all that the right will win. I think that probably goes to show that it's game on. It's probably either sides to be won, and probably either sides to be lost as well. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see those back rooms, all those PR companies, all those advisors. Sometimes you take a risk to take a step forward, and if it backfires, it might send you 2 steps backwards. But if it works, it might propel you another step forward. So it'd be interesting to find out what the dynamics of those decisions are and where they're going. But still, in saying all of that, Luxon just can't get traction. He just can't get traction.
It's a death spiral now. That's what it feels like to me, is that every poll gets worse. And then that's going to be, it's that repetition in people's mind that he's just doing worse and worse and worse. And then so by the time that they get polled, it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't believe him either. They don't want to hammer their flag to his mast. Yuck. Why did I say that?
You're gross.
Because he does feel like a lame duck.
Yeah, it's interesting, because he's got all the same attributes as many of their leaders in the past, including being bald, but he's not sticking. And look, to be honest with you, I don't really know why. Like, I looked at those results today and I kind of thought to myself, I just don't know. I don't know why he's not resonating with them. Really, other than the likability factor, how different is he from John Key? Like, really? When it comes to politics, how different is he? It's such a fascinating. Politics is so fickle, and it's like, that's
he's
why
just not likable.
Yeah, but
he's not likable even in the same way that John Key was.
But hang on, he's not likable. So we'll vote for Rimmer. Just think about that conclusion.
That's fair. Like, David Seymour is one of the most unlikable, I would even go further, unfuckable humans on this planet.
Please.
I remember when the what did he say in the Women's Day, like a couple of years back? I'd give it all for love. I just want.
Was it something about Lister? I'm sure it was something about Lister, wasn't
it? I just want some brave woman to take him out of the game. Take one for the team. Oh. All
right. I'm back with you. Hey, let's have a look at this story. This is a really, really interesting story, and I'm really intrigued by. I'm probably the only one that will. I'm sure there'll be a ton of. But whatever we did last week, when everyone told me that this was pointless to talk about, I'm sure this will go down the same path. But I'm really interested in the overall story. Prize money row in South Island ultra race ignites international debate. John Moore always thought it would garner a bit of attention. Well, John has certainly fucking done that, but was not expecting this when Moore's events company, CJM's Events, which he owned with his wife Carol, posted a prize offer of $10,000 for the first person to break the 8-hour mark in the 100-kilometer South Island ultra race. They'd hoped it would generate some buzz, which it has done. The event, which snakes along the West Coast Wilderness Trail, starts in Greymouth, finishes Hokitika, is considered one of the most scenic ultramarathon races in the world, with its well-maintained tracks and elevation of just 720 meters. Moore also believes it to be one of the fastest events. He hoped to see the 8-hour barrier broken for the race this year in what would be the 4th staging of the event. So he and Carol, the company's managing director, dangled a wee carrot for competitors, putting up cash prize of $10,000 for the first person to go under 8 hours. Last Monday, the organizers posted the announcement on the event website and various ultra running pages on social media. Not long after that, they were facing allegations of sexism and threats of a mass boycott as they found themselves in the crosshairs of an international debate about whether ultra distance running is really the great leveler between genders. Critics of the move claim the cash prize overwhelmingly favors men, who are more likely to be able to break the performance target than women. Now, part of this conversation is this. One of the things that's been said for a long time about men competing against women, women competing against men, is that long distance running is the leveler. And in fact, this race, the last time this race was run, it was won by a woman. She bet all the men and won, right? And the time, and I'm going to play some audio shortly, the time for the fastest man and the fastest woman is only different by about 2 minutes. So 8 hours and 17 minutes versus 8 hours and 20 minutes. It's like only a 2-minute difference between the whole thing. And it seems like when you're talking about areas of speed, like the 100 meters, there's about a 10% variance. When you're talking about things like power, like weightlifting, it's about a 30% variance. But for some reason, long distance running, maybe because of lactic acid buildup, maybe because men typically carry more muscle mass, so they're heavier for long distances, seems to be the great leveler. That's always sort of been part of the pushback. But now that this thing was offered, everyone's going, hang on, that favors the guys. So this is sexist. I've got more to talk about with this, Chewie, because I've got some thoughts. But what do you think of just the initial stages?
Well, first of all, I was shocked, and I've got to say, I am boycotting this event.
Me too. I was going to do it, but
I'm
nah,
not
fuck
competing.
them.
I'm not competing, and it's definitely because of this issue. No, you're right. Everything that I have read about ultra long distance running, it does level out. And when you look at long distance runners, the body shapes, the body types are remarkably similar. Long, lean muscle rather than heavy muscle mass. You're not talking about explosive bursts of energy or anything like that.
They're
it's
called
economy of motion.
Yeah, they're called fast twitch muscles. Sprinters use fast twitch muscles.
Absolutely. It's more about economy of motion and preservation of your body's energy or how it maintains. And you mentioned lactic acid as well. Like literally these people that do the ultra long marathons are built different. The muscles work differently.
Yep.
And ultra long distance races have been taken out by women reasonably regularly. Now, the argument that these people are saying it's not fair, they're kind of going, yeah, but a big cash prize will attract more men.
Oh, okay.
And
hang on. Wouldn't it also attract more women?
Well, that's what I thought. But the people that are complaining about it are sort of going, no, it's just going to attract more elite men. And therefore they disappear down this sort of hole of like, of course a woman couldn't beat a man.
Even though last year.
But they have.
Yeah, last year a woman won it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think these people that have put up this prize just absolutely looked at who won it last time and the chances are, I think the difference in winning is something like 1% difference between men and women's times and stuff like that. That's close enough to buggery to just chuck up a single big prize pool. It's if they break that time. It's not the winner. They could have a winner that doesn't beat that time. Nobody gets the money.
Correct. Yeah, and the other thing is so often, like this is this conversation that I'm loving in society. When I say loving, I mean I'm kind of fascinated by it. Yeah, is on one level we're talking about us all being equal, or another level we're talking about equality. So equality, that whole kind of conversation. And in this instance, when these people just go, whoever it is, they didn't say it as bluntly as this, but whoever it is, man or woman that breaks it, you get the money. On some level, feels appropriate. And then in this culture we live in at the moment, where we're kind of flattening the genders / sexes, and sort of, I'm not. This is not a critical thing. I'm saying this is what's happening. And there's I think the BAFTAs have gone away from best male, best female. It's just best now. That's we're flattening everything. The Leah Thompsons in swimming against Penn State. We're flattening it, and then this seems to be flattened with no sort of debate around who can, can't, should, shouldn't compete. And when they flatten it, they're like, hey, no. I just, because the flip side is, if there is an advantage for men in long distance running, if there is, and there doesn't seem to be based on the numbers really, but if there is, then the next question is, if someone was to put up a cash prize, there are like different ages if you're younger, you're probably more likely to get it than older. If you're taller with a longer stride, you might be better than shorter. Like then when do you go, actually, we now have to provide categories for all of these people. Because like if you're disabled and you wanted to do it, then this is ableist. Like where do you draw the line? When Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile barrier, I'm sure they didn't just go, but he's a guy, and of course a guy was going to do it. It was like it was just something to be broken by someone.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating.
I think if we were talking about a powerlifting competition, sure. But I mean, this is a particular sport, and it just seems to be that when it is these endurance type events, then that difference between men and women just really comes down. You look at Ironman competitions and triathlons and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in the chat here, Caitlyn's here tonight. Hello, Caitlyn.
I believe pause for that, bro. Awesome on the news tonight, Caitlyn. Saw that on News Hub. Well done, mate.
Oh, I missed
keep
that.
going.
Okay.
Yep.
I believe the world ultra champ is a woman. So there you go. Finsgard says that the record is by a man
for this race. By about 2 minutes.
And I think the last time they ran it, a woman won it.
Yep.
So I mean, straight away there, it's not a clean sweep by the men. And Finsgard also says, they had to shave like 20 minutes off the course record to make that 8-hour time. So it's a challenge. Like they're definitely putting up the money to get someone to smash that record.
What would that be if you work that out? 20 minutes over 100 Ks. Oh, I don't know. Sometime per K difference. It would be sometime.
Sweaty just thinking about it.
An extra sweat.
And we get. Do we have a breakdown of the percentages of entrants by gender? I mean, it's not like you're going to have a 50-50 breakdown. You're just going to have the people that want to just run solidly for 8 hours, and it's an elite group of people. Yep. You don't. This isn't like, I'm training up to do a half marathon. No, you're running solidly for 8 hours. There's not very many people that can literally do that.
Thanks, Emma. All right, let's just have a listen, and then we'll wrap it up and move on to the hate speech conversation. To the actual one of the event runners, they've actually come up with a solution. Now, whether the solution is happy or sad, or you think it's fair or not, this is the solution they've come up with.
Or via the New Zealand Herald podcast section, iHeartRadio, or your preferred podcast platform.
Thank you for the advert. Appreciate that.
Greater lifetime savings.
I don't know why we got an advert, but we'll keep going. Here we go.
From News Talk ZB.
Well, the ultramarathon race on the West Coast has become surprisingly controversial. The organisers are being accused of sexism because they offered $10,000 for the first runner to do the race in under 8 hours. But the problem is it's apparently close to impossible for women to run that race in under 8 hours.
Well, no,
so the organisers then decided best way to do this is add a second prize, $10,000 for the first man to do it in under 8 hours, $10,000 for the first woman to do it in under 8 hours.
So they've upped it by 10 grand. So now there's 20 grand up for grabs.
Marathoners John Moore. Hi, John.
Hi.
Has a woman ever done it in 8 hours?
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
No one's done it.
She's done no research.
Do you reckon a woman can?
Yep.
Do you reckon a man can?
Good interview.
Well, what's the fastest time a woman's ever done it?
No research.
8 hours 24:03.
And a man?
8 hours 21:40. 8 hours 21:45.
Okay, so it's like a 3 minute difference.
2 minutes and 18 seconds difference.
So where are these people who say that women can't do it in 8 hours? Where are they getting that from?
It's weird. It's strange because we wanted to see the event break 8 hours, and when we assessed it, the record time for the males was 8 hours 21 in round terms. And last year, Kanoka, she won the race and she won it in 8 hours 24.
So she actually beat all the blokes.
Yeah, she beat the guys by 40 seconds. Third was another female. So first, third, and sixth on the 100K last year.
1, 3, 6. That means
John,
2, 4, 5.
Do you think maybe you'd get around it if you said the blokes have to do it in 8 hours and the girls have to do it in 8 hours, 2 minutes and 45?
might have been, but it wouldn't have achieved what we wanted to achieve. We want to see people go under 8 hours for the event. It's like the 4 minute mile.
Yeah.
And it's just become crazy, really, with people saying that it should be 10% different and all this, because all these things are based off world records. When you look at the world record for 100K, it's on a athletics track running round and round a track. And that's so different.
Yeah. So that's the gist of it. So what they're doing now is they've given out 2 prizes, $10,000 for the first man to do it and $10,000 for the first woman to do it. Now, I fear what's going to then happen.
That's quite clever.
Yeah, but what's now going to happen, I think, I don't know, is people will complain that it's still an unfair advantage because men will win the prize before women because men will get there first.
Oh,
But-
I don't know about that. But
Well-
I mean, they put theoretically 20 grand up.
Yeah.
For something that hasn't been done.
I think
But that solves the argument.
It kind of dovetails a little bit into the next conversation on some themes, not on the reality of what we're going to talk about, but on some themes around sort of our roles and expectations of who we are as people, what the sexes do, can do, should do when it comes to things like sports. And look, I'm not going to get into a debate about sports. I know that for a lot of people out there, issues around, gender ideology and gender, protecting one's gender and gender being safe in those areas has got fuck all to do with sports. It's to do with a lot of different things. That sports is sort of an icing on the cake of life. It's not important. But it is something that if we are going to all celebrate all of us as a similar sort of level of competence, a similar sort of species, where we're losing the diversity between the sexes, that this is probably more and more. And for these poor people, I do feel sorry for them who have gone, hey guys, let's do this really fun thing. If anyone breaks 8 hours, here's 10 grand. And to have that blow back and be like, you fucking assholes. I'm just like, you poor guys. What are you talking about?
No, it did seem deeply unfair to these people. Rob here's Rob here's got a question. Still haven't actually heard what the argument is on the side of those claiming sexism. It makes it hard to appreciate the argument. The line that I saw was that it was unfair that it wasn't gendered because men have an innate advantage in this, which I don't agree with. And then when they pushed a little bit harder on it, it was just like, well, if there's money up for grabs, it'll just, the only reason that a woman won last time is that there wasn't as many of the elite men in this sport running that race. And by having 10 grand up there, it will attract more men for the prize money.
But it also attract more elite women. That's the thing.
Exactly. It was a nonsensical line of, like, it fell apart the more that they talked about it. It didn't make any sense to me.
Here's the line for people. If you're asking why is it being claimed that it's sexist, critics of the move claim the cash prize overwhelmingly favors men who are more likely to be able to meet the performance target than women. So that's the argument for why it's sexist. Whether you accept it or believe it or think it's right or wrong, that's the argument.
If it was a different sport, sure. This particular one, the line is so thin. It's nothing.
Anything else in the chat, or should we move on to our third and final topic of the night?
I think we've really Arrest JK here has just come to a realization that his complete lack of talent and skill has ruined his sporting career. And man, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Look, Emma, I hope you got your book, Emma. I sent it off last week. Tell me if it's arrived or not. Emma kind of says, I feel like Emma's got her tongue in her cheek, but this is sort of thing. When sports are gendered, people get mad. When sports are not gendered, people get mad. Let's just ban sports. But that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, one hand, we say this and everything's the same. And on the other hand, we're like, no, we're so very different. It's like, and this is still this language thing that we've talked about before. We're still discovering in society what these words and how we're going to treat this. And we won't know until we're at the end of this journey. And even though it seems that, like Emma says, you're mad because we do. No, you're mad because we don't. When we travel far enough, we'll have a consensus to decide what is society now saying about whatever that issue is. All right. Speaking of that, that's been a bit of a clunky stretch into our conversation around anti-trans activists.
I've got a perfect segue for this.
Okay, go.
This bitch. Let's talk about her.
Let us have a look to see what's been going on here. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard news about this. It's kind of been in the news for 2 or 3 days now. This is from a few nights ago when British anti-trans activist whether a British anti-trans activist visa waiver into the country is to be lifted will be decided by the end of the week, Immigration New Zealand says. Kelly J. Keane Minchon's entry for speaking events in Auckland and Wellington may be in doubt after her rally in Melbourne erupted into clashes between LGBTI activists and some of her supporters, a number of whom are seen throwing Nazi salutes. Immigration General Manager Richard Owen said Keen Minhyun's case was being reviewed as quickly as possible, as he expected it to be resolved before the end of the week at the latest. Keen Minhyun, is known as Posie Parker, posted a video on Twitter in response challenging Prime Minister Christopher Hipkins to revoke her visa at his peril. So let's have a look at that conversation. So this is part of her conversation on Twitter, and this is our best mate on the AM show talking to the Prime Minister about that challenge made by Min Hyun. Let's have a look.
Controversial British activist Posie Parker, that's what she goes by. She's issued a warning to our Prime Minister.
So Chris Hipkins, roll the dice, my friend.
What?
I don't think you'll dare to keep me from coming into New Zealand. But we'll see. We'll see.
The decision is with Immigration New Zealand. Chris Hipkins is with us now.
Tell you what, we've got more. We want to give Chippy the chance to respond, but I would just go, all right, you're gone. It's like you want to, because if they don't, she'll go, yeah, see, they were too scared to ban me. And if you do, she'll be able to play the victim card. But I'm like, whatever, even for that's enough. You're out of here. But we'll just see what Chippy had to say about it.
Prime Minister, good morning. Do you have any update on this situation?
It's a matter for the officials. It's not something that I'm going to intervene in or get involved with. Ultimately, whether someone meets the good character test or not to enter New Zealand isn't something that I would get involved in.
Yeah. Do you think she's threatening to sue politicians like yourself, media, for calling her anti-trans? I mean, have you actually, in all of the comments you've made about her, can you give me an example of one thing she has said that you're not happy with?
Stupid question, because Chippy just said this has nothing to do with me, and now he's going, well, what has she said to make? He's asking what has she said to keep her out, and Chippy's already going, look, this is not my decision. But anyway.
As I indicated very clearly yesterday, it's not something I've spent a huge amount of time on, and I don't intend to. I believe in free speech. People are entitled to express their views. People are entitled to condemn other people whose views they disagree with. No one's entitled to incite people to do, to violence and to things such as that. I'd encourage everyone, when they're exercising their right to free speech, to do that responsibly. That's part of living in a community, but we have rules that protect free speech for a reason.
Totally. It's interesting because your response to this is different to that of your predecessor.
Ooh,
who
I thought they were connected at the hip in the same person.
You're saying, actually, so long as you're not inciting violence against a particular group of people, then you should be able to go and say what you like.
That's not necessarily what I said. I said that people should exercise their right to free speech responsibly. I don't think people should deliberately go out as to offend other people or to attack them or to ridicule them or to persecute them. I don't think that that's what responsible human beings should do to other people. That's not very nice. But in terms of what the law says, there's a clear line in the law around what you can't do, and I respect the line that I respect that line.
Okay.
So there you go. That was a response from that. I thought it might be interesting to actually have a look as well as to when she was in Melbourne, what happened at the protest there, so people have a very clear understanding as to what's going on, and then we might have a look at the 3 News report from tonight. So this is the Melbourne protest, ABC News Australia reporting on what happened over there.
This is British activist Kelly J. Keane-Mitchell. She's been appearing at anti-transgender rights rallies across Australia. She says she is calling for women's rights, but those who oppose her coming here say her message is one of hate, and her next stop is Hobart.
The hurt that this is causing the trans and gender diverse community in Tasmania is undescribable. The slurs that we're hearing from the speaker and from her supporters are abhorrent.
A group of neo-Nazis joined the Melbourne rally, performing the Nazi salute and sparking violent clashes.
Tasmania is a bit different to Victoria, and I don't expect to have that kind of thing occurring. We've certainly got security in place. We've talked to the police, we've talked to the parliamentary security people.
They're fake feminists who are playing footsies with Nazis, and they should be condemned.
Saturday's events have ignited calls for the Hobart rally to be cancelled. That decision rests with the Speaker and the Upper House President. They've given the green light for it to go ahead, but say it must be respectful.
There you go. So there's your first point, Chewie. Maybe I'll throw up. So this is, people know who watch this for me, right? And stay with me, baby birds. I'm not gonna, don't cut out on the end of one sentence and think that's the finish of this conversation. But you all know that watch this regularly. When I talk about speech, I always err on the side of more speech rather than less, right? I've said very clearly I don't think that there is such a thing as kind of absolutism when it comes to free speech. I mean, we could use examples of, threatening to kill the Prime Minister or shouting fire in a theatre. But if there's an opportunity to either err between less speech or more speech, I typically err towards more speech. So this is one of the reasons I sent out this text or tweet in the weekend. And this is a journey for me as well. We're going to get there. So this is a tweet I put out in the general. It says, unless there is a direct call to action, I don't in general hold people accountable for what their supporters say or do. What is important to ask is, what messages must you be sending if these are the sort of people you're attracting? In other words, we've got examples of every political figure from Bernie Sanders to, Donald Trump to, I guess, Posie Parker, having their supporters do horrific things. There was a situation where Bernie Sanders supporter shot up and killed some people and then claimed to be a supporter of Bernie and doing it in his name. So it's very difficult for me to hold the person accountable for the actions of their supporters unless it's a direct call. However, it's not difficult to go, if these are the people who are hearing your message and getting something from it, what does that say about your message? So, Chewie, jump in, sir.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but I mean, it all falls apart when you're the person at the rally with the microphone that has the chance to turn to the Nazis that are on your side, very clearly on your side, and saying, you guys are some of the most detestable human beings to ever walk the earth.
Agreed.
Fuck off. We do not need you. And at your first instance, if you have the opportunity to do that and you don't, that is the message that you're sending, that you are happy to have them at your back.
Yeah, it comes back to that thing we've talked about several times. And look, I don't know if I agree necessarily with this statement, but this statement that gets said a lot, that if there's a Nazi sitting at the dinner table and there's 11 other people sitting there as well who don't get up and leave, then there's 12 people sitting at 12 Nazis sitting at the dinner table. Yep. So therefore,
I mean, this is a major major Australasian city.
Yep. With
a group that felt so confident, so comfortable that they could march and do the Nazi salute in front of everyone, and the police would have their back.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's necessarily true, because if you notice, they all had their faces covered. So when you say so comfortable to go and do it, most of them were unidentifiable and standing behind police lines. That doesn't sound that comfortable to me. That sounds
that's
like
just their uniform, though, more than anything. I've been following that particular group for a little while, but
okay.
But yeah, I mean, that kind of comes to a point. I had a conversation with a workmate of mine around this, right? And because I follow these groups and these arguments for so much, it's very easy to just kind of skip the lesson, and just go, yeah, but they're Nazis. That's all the conversation we need to see. Nazis bad. Let's get rid of the Nazis. We all had an agreement in 1940 that the Nazis were bad, and that's it. We don't need to relitigate. We don't need to hear what new ideas they've come up with. They're fuckwits. Let's get rid of them. They should never, ever be allowed to do this ever again. It's not a debate about free speech. We've already done that. Nazis bad. But yeah, when you are someone that goes, hey, look, you can defeat these ideas in the marketplace of ideas, and erring to the side of, more speech is good speech. I agree with that too, because you've got to sit there and go, well, if the boot was on the other foot, what if it was my views that were being suppressed?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to these particular views, when it is literally debating a group's right to exist. That's not, I prefer Marmite over Vegemite. Is it?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and this is why this has been a bit of a journey for me, because the conversation as well. Caitlyn, check your Twitter. Caitlyn, check your Twitter messages. And this has been a bit of a journey for me, because my question is always, and it's not because I'm litigious or I'm trying to look for defense, it's because I'm precise. And exactly what you're saying, if I'm on the other side of a conversation, I want to know my protections there. What does it mean to incite? That's a big part of it for me. What does it mean to incite? I mean, this is going on with the Donald Trump stuff at the moment. Him saying we're going to fight like hell or whatever is. Was that enough for him to incite what happened in the Capitol building? What does that actually mean? And one of the reasons that I'm now kind of coming across and coming around, kind of coming to a conclusion is something that you sent out. But before we do that as well, I kind of want to put this thing out there, and this is just a pondering. And okay, fair enough, Caitlyn. Thank you. I won't say what we did. Anyway, we are. I'm wondering about the oxygen that this is given as well, and I do wonder this, and I'm not suggesting that people should shut up and not pay any attention, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't protest, but I do know as well that one of the reasons that got good coverage and made good news coverage was the protest, was the rally and the counter protest. And I wonder if there's any place, and I guess I'm thinking about like an advisory role right now, and someone going, right, let's blue sky think, people, what's the best outcome for us here? And if it got no oxygen at all, because there was like no counter protest, would that be a better outcome for the cause, or giving the rally a whole bunch of attention and giving it headlines all around the world? Is that a better cause because it's standing up to the bully? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that if I was in a planning meeting for the counter protest, I'd be like, just imagine if no one turned up and there was just a bunch of sad ass white middle-aged people going, yeah. And they were like, oh, and the media only got one thing to show. It's just I'm thinking out loud and wondering if that is ever a conversation that's had.
That literally happened in Christchurch the other week. It made me laugh. There was a pro-Russian rally.
Yeah,
that a lot of the counterspin media were talking about it, that sort of thing. One dude turned up on the Bridge of Remembrance. Hilarious when it happens. Look, it's something that has been a discussion for as long as I've been looking at these groups. Is it better to actively combat them? Is it better to ignore them as the sad bunch of losers that they are? And I don't think there's a real answer. Nicola Willis said today that she believed that sunlight was the best disinfectant. I would tweak that a little bit. You shine a light on something ugly so you can smash it. Like, yeah, I think, and this will be the only time that I ever say these words. I think Hitler said it best. And I've got this in a different window so I can read it. Hitler confessed in retrospect the only thing that would have broken our movement if the adversary had understood its principle and from the first day had smashed with the most extreme brutality the nucleus of our new movement. Goebbels said if the enemy had known how weak we were at that stage, they probably would have reduced us to jelly. It would have crushed in blood the very beginning of our work. So, yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to something that is literally a neo-Nazi group, they do not have speech with any relevance, not even a shred of goodness, because they might try and hide that. They tried to hide behind the concept of free speech because that's the only platform that they have any standing. They can't debate on the relevance of their argument. It is irrelevant.
Yeah.
But they find a common ally in the anti-trans movement.
Yeah.
They find an ally that is looking for backup.
Yeah.
And it ties into a lot of their things of traditional gender roles, of traditional society. It's a button issue for so many people. But it's that classic, like, Are we the baddies? Yes.
It's
you are the baddies.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mm.
And that's always, if you're ever doing that, then that's an ugly situation to be in, whether it's a protest or whether it's a war type situation. I also wonder, I'd like to play the clip from TV3 News tonight because it kind of expands out on it a little bit. But one of the things they think about, so this is the counter, I can't say that now, can I? The contrarian point to what I was just saying as well, the question I was asking, because the reason that Caitlyn will be turned away is if the rallies pose a threat of disorder. So in other words, saying that giving them no oxygen, that's basically what I'm saying, giving them no oxygen. Remember, we've talked before about the Virgin Mary episode of South Park. And because the Catholic Church put up such a stink about it, it got a 10-fold increase of viewership that week. So if you give it no oxygen and no one knows about it, is that a better outcome? The flip side to that, and I think it talks about it in this story from News Hub, is that the reason she'll get turned away is because of concerns around safety to do with the actual event. So therefore, okay, caveat, this is not my advice, but if the counter protesters make sure that the people know it's going to be unsafe because of their protest, that could be a reason to get turned away. So how does that kind of marry into this conversation as well? Because if you have a look at the story, we have a look at the story now. And again, this is not a criticism, they're just observations. At one point, one of the counter protesters does kind of get up on stage and try and rip something out of someone's hand and trying to scream into the mic, and that creates a kerfuffle. Now that kerfuffle, that physical altercation, was caused by the counter protester getting on stage. So that's one of the reasons of the physical conflict. How does that work out? Like sort of saying there is going to be physical conflict, so she better not come, or not being there at all and giving them no oxygen, or something in between. I'm just kind of thinking what would be best. When I talk a lot to my, I don't want to say to my kids, it's patronizing, but to people, to marketers, I'm going like, what outcome do you want from this? Like what outcome, if you could wave your magic wand and go, what outcome do you want from this? What would that be? Okay, let's start with that. How do we get there? What is the outcome that people want from this woman turning up to make what would be the outcome for the protest? Is it just that they want a presence felt? Is it that they want to support the trans community? Is it that they want to shout her down? Like, what's the outcome? Okay, if it's that you want to support the trans community, then you can do anything for that. I don't know if you remember, Chewie, when the Destiny Church people turned up here to Dunedin to protest in the Octagon. The counter community were on the other side of the Octagon having a concert, all looking at the stage. That was it. There was they didn't even acknowledge them. They had a concert, they had a musical concert, and they just had a big dance party, and they were dancing to like Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba and that kind of stuff. And it was brilliant. It was a brilliant response.
And so, I think that is the current plan for the counter protests. Certainly when it came to Hobart, the counter protesters there came with so much noise making equipment, bullhorns, speakers, the whole thing. You could not hear what she was saying.
So if that's so that's the target, to drown her out. So then how do you do that? That doesn't require any sort of physical interaction at all. That requires bullhorns, PA systems, noisemakers, and probably getting close and making noise. That's what that requires. So you could actually do that with no physical interaction at all. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't. You make your own judgment call on that. But if that's the outcome, then that can be addressed many, many ways. That means what that is people that she's coming, she's speaking, but she's being drowned out. Okay, so how do we do that? Like, let's now start again and go, how do we then get that outcome that we want? And that's how you do it, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not going to be there, but if it was in Dunedin, I'd probably be there, but it's not in Dunedin, so I'm not going to be there. But how do you actually get that outcome then? That's where I'd be starting the planning.
The other part of that argument of like, do you just ignore it, or do you do a counter protest?
Yep.
And I think you mentioned this very briefly just before, is like part of it is showing up for the communities that are being targeted by these groups. You have to show solidarity, and I'm all about solidarity. I'm also all about being very loud in public. So that's great for me as well. But yeah, these groups, like the trans community in New Zealand, my God, the mental fortitude that you have to put up with this conversation, this constant grinding conversation of, do these people deserve to exist? do we care about the suicide rate, the rate of poor mental health and all of that sort of thing. They get reduced to very brief talking points or the worst case scenarios. Should they even be allowed in these spaces? I think this is something that people need to show up and just go, yes, we will fight for you.
It's really. I'm really interested in the outcome. So I'm picturing, could you imagine if this was happening? I'm just going to pick Dunedin because I know the areas. Could you imagine if this was happening in the Octagon in Dunedin and there was 1,000 people there turning up to Caitlyn protest, but then down at the Oval there was 10,000 people having a party, like at the other end of town. Pick a side. Yeah, at the other end of town, you're ratioing them in real time in real life. What would be more impacting? Because you're showing your support. You're like, come to our party at the Oval. Come to our party if you're in Auckland at the Auckland Domain, whatever it is. Let's have a big party. Everyone turn up there and let's ratio these fuckers and show them where the power actually lies. With the 10,000 people at this event versus the 500 sad asses at your one.
Yeah, I would definitely have it at the same place, but because there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is a relatively small group, the people that go to the initial protest, they will feel that they are with their people.
Yeah.
They feel like I'm part of a movement and nobody is here telling us that we're wrong.
Yeah. All right.
If
Hey, let's have a listen.
At the same place, they can do the mental math.
Yeah. Look, I hear you, man. I hear you. And as I said, I'm interested as to how this is going to best work out for the message that you want to get across there. Let's have a listen to this last story before we head off for the night. Here we go.
The anti-trans activist known as Posie Parker has threatened our Prime Minister, telling him to revoke her visa at his peril. Trouble is, it's not his job, it's Immigration New Zealand's.
It's considering turning her away after her rally in Melbourne attracted neo-Nazis, and she wants to hold similar rallies in Auckland and Wellington this weekend. Here's Yannicka Terrell.
This is why Posie Parker, real name Kelly J. Keane, could be turned away at our border. Not because of her views.
There is no such thing as non-binary!
Or her suggestion that armed men should protect.
It's such a stupid thing to say. There is no such thing as non-binary. I mean, you could argue, I don't agree or I don't believe, but if it's in popular culture and it's in dictionary definitions and it's in verbiage and it's being used by society, then there is, so it's just such a dumbed down, stupid perspective to say the water is not wet. It is not wet water. The sky is not blue. It's just, it's infantile. It's ridiculous.
Protect women in bathrooms from trans people.
I'm talking about you dads who maybe carry. I think you should start using women's toilets.
But she could be turned
That
away.
Video's been taken down. Yeah. That video's been taken down.
Minister for Women in Education.
It attracted skirmishes between her neo-Nazi supporters performing the Hitler salute and trans rights counter-protesters. But Keane is livid. Immigration New Zealand is now reviewing her right to come here. She's threatening legal action and calling out our Prime Minister.
Tell you what, Chris. Mr. Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, let me just tell you this. Revoke my visa at your peril. Roll the dice, my friend. I don't think you'll dare.
How about Christopher Hipkins turning up to the counter protest? How would that look in Wellington? That'd be pretty good.
To keep me from coming into New Zealand. Hi.
Immigration New Zealand can turn someone away if they're considered a risk to security or a threat to public order.
There you
Whether
go.
someone meets the good character test or not to enter New Zealand isn't something that I would get involved in.
But National believes Keane should be let in.
We wouldn't ban her from coming here because we are also a liberal democracy that believes in free speech.
Police will be at Keane's rallies planned for here at Auckland's Albert Park on Saturday and Wellington's Civic Square on Sunday. And Auckland Council says it's received her health and safety plan. The council says we recognise that Aucklanders hold a
Anyway, we don't support it. We're just doing the thing. Now, Chewie, I said to you this has been a journey for me as well, because the question that I asked at the start was, what is incitement? This is actually from you, yeah? Not from you, but I saw this on your Twitter feed. And it's a thread about incitement and what it means. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. It's from Lila VPG. And it's since Kelly J. Keane, aka Posie is trying to enter Australia. Let's have a look at some of her alleged behaviours outside of transphobia. Alleged, it does say that. In 2019, Kelly was a guest on a certain person's show. He was a white nationalist who was called for white ethno-states, made videos with Richard Spencer Mark. I don't know who these people are. I know who David Duke is. And well as court documents showing she was accused of SAing a disabled teen. In a now deleted YouTube video, this is what you saw when you said what? Kelly said armed men should enter women's bathrooms to protect them against trans people, and suggested trans men should be sterilized in a tweet. This is an incitement of violence. She has partnered with the Heritage Foundation on multiple occasions, including in 2019 and 2020, who are anti-abortion and anti-LGBT+. Blah. In 2019, Kelly traveled to Norway to speak at a conference alongside Hans, I can't say that name, a Holocaust denial, whom she took a selfie with afterwards. Proud Boys, who are at the January 6th Capitol Rioters, have been spoken at her events and had selfies with her. Just not to defend her, the selfies with a personality is not something that you get necessarily hold to, because they probably have hundreds of people coming up to the selfies. That doesn't necessarily mean, but a lot of these other things do. So there are layers of things that I think you can hold accountable as well, like guns in restrooms. That's a pretty big one if you want to call to violence, incitement to violence. At one of Kelly's recent events, one of the speakers directly quoted Hitler. It's obvious that a lie that trans women are women. If you want proof, I'd like to refer you to the writings of a certain Adolf Hitler in his seminal work Mein Kampf. Shall we see this? What she says?
Small ways lie. Do you know the big lie? The big lie was first described by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf. The big lie is such a big lie that ordinary people like us think, well, that can't be a lie, because I'd never tell any big a lie as that.
What the
We only lie in small ways. The big lie, well, there is one big lie going on, and it was begun by men in the early part of the 20th century. It was began when they had an erotic fantasy, and they decided.
Enough. Quoting Adolf Hitler, she praised Tommy Robinson. She had been invited by other co-founders of Hearts of Oak, Carl Benjamin, who is described by anti-feminists and anti-Islamic. He's reportedly said Jewish people, unfortunately for them, have got to drop the identity politics. There are only a few examples, just a coincidence, keeps happening and goes on. So once I read that tweet, and look, they do say allegedly for a lot of that, but I mean, I'm going to do some more research. I think there's some stuff in there that are pretty clearly incitements to violence. I think that's questions now been answered. So I don't have a problem with the concept of her being associated with that based on those readings, which I am, so everyone knows, going to fact check, right? But based on tonight and based on the allegation, that if it is as it pans out, then I don't have a problem with that.
You just judge her by the things that she said and the company that she keeps. Is enough for me. I think the Minister of Immigration will just cancel her visa. I've had a lot of people seen a lot of comments about how does that work? The UK is a visa waiver country. That means you don't need a visa before you come here. Basically, coming into New Zealand, you get a stamp on your thing. You can stay for 3 months. That doesn't mean that she won't get bounced at the border.
Yeah, well, that's basically what happens. I mean, that's like RV. What's his name? He came over from Australia. The guy who has been convicted of abusing his wife, or whatever. Who
also had a big conversation with her, which I love, because he's a Nazi apologist as well. And if we're talking about this woman being a feminist, a women's rights person, why is she having an interview with a convicted domestic violence guy.
Yeah, interesting point. It's my enemy of my enemy is my friend all over again. But he got bounced at the border. He arrived and got turned around and went back. And so I'd be interested to know. I mean, I guess this is because I'm a logistics person. If she got bounced at the border, would she be bounced back to Australia, or would she be bounced all the way back to the UK? I wonder.
Yeah.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Well, I went as far as to email Minister of Immigration today with my thoughts. I encourage other people to do it. It takes 5 minutes. I am putting his email address up in the chat.
And the one other exciting thing, not about this, but about other people kind of getting their comeuppance, is Chewie won't be with us for this, but there's rumor going around started by Donald J. Trump that Donald J. Trump might be getting arrested tomorrow. So that's going to be fun, isn't it? We'll have to see tomorrow night show whether that's actually the case, that Donald J. Trump might be getting charged with crimes tomorrow, New Zealand time, Tuesday, US time. So we shall see what happens. According to Trump and some others now as well. All right. Hey, we're rocking and rolling. We're wrapping this up because I've got a teenager to get upstairs to check on her for her COVID and to give her space. Yeah, I'm wrapping us, so you can wrap, or what I'm about to say is tweets, comments, or anything you want to wrap up with, Chewie.
I just want to say one thing with National saying that they wouldn't ban her. It was just a couple of weeks ago that they were at Big Gay Out.
Yeah.
So I mean, any time that National pretend, they go shopping for votes at Big Gay Out, they pay lip service to that community. They didn't want to stop conversion therapy. They don't want to stop this person from coming to this country. They don't want to protect people in that community. Like you love to say, when someone tells you who they are, believe them
the first time. I'd like to take that, but we'll probably appropriately attribute that to my Angelou, because she actually said it. So I won't claim that for me in case anyone's watching. But yes, that's what she said. Yeah, and maybe that's one of the reasons that he looks so uncomfortable at Big Gay Out, and that his conservative Christian perspective
It's probably
isn't going
uncomfortable
well.
because he thinks he's going to catch the gay. There's a lot of it, right? And it's airborne.
And there is a Big Gay Out, certainly. And I think that maybe we shall. Maybe that's part of the reasons that people are finding him untrustworthy. He turns up to events that he has no interest in supporting the people of, and backing the people who are at that event. And it's like, vote for me as I'm sticking you in the back. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe that's part of the reason he's not resonating, because it's very easy to see that example. Maybe other people are feeling and seeing other examples which aren't quite as obvious, and that's part of the reason he's not resonating. Perhaps. All right, team. Hey, look, thank you once again. I really appreciate you being involved tonight. I know it was a bit of a different show tonight. There was sort of a couple of topics there that were not necessarily hard news, but were news adjacent. Is that the right word? News adjacent. Thanks to our patrons. We love you to bits. If you're interested in doing supporting what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News is who we are. I'd love to have you on board. The smallest membership is like $5. The most is like, I think, 1.3 million or something like that. Is that what we did, Chewie? 1.3 million per month. Per month, actually. Just remember that. It's per month. And that's how you can get involved, and to all our beautiful people there who are involved, we thank you. And as I've been saying, Chewie, I don't know if I've said this to you, but at the moment there are at least 5 right-leaning to far-right daily or weekly broadcasts in New Zealand on New Zealand media. If you think about the Platform, Counterspin, Common Room, and there's 2 new ones that have started. One is a Voices for Fuckwits back Chantel Baker thing called, ironically, Reality Radio. And then there's a family first one called, I don't know, We Hate Gays. I can't remember what it's called. But there are 5 of them right now out there on New Zealand, in New Zealand houses. 5 of them, right? That doesn't include places like Newstalk ZB, that when there's a cyclone coming in, they go far right as well. So in the space we're in, there are at least 5 significantly backed sources of dis and misinformation. Now, it might sound like a bit of a hard sell, but I'm like, we want to keep doing this. If you want to get on board and help us, then it's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And it's sharing our stuff and telling people about us and help us grow. Just to put it out there.
Yeah. Reality Check have enough money to do letterbox drops and have a massive fucking billboard in Auckland.
Yeah,
so they got money.
And a plane in the sky flying with things behind it.
Oh my God, did they?
Yep.
I didn't see that. Jesus.
Yep.
Look, all we're asking for is enough money to buy a heat-seeking missile to take out that plane.
And
That's all.
a couple of EVs. All right, team, we're going to go. I'm going to go check on my teenager. What I got to go do now is basically it's about 9 degrees in Dunedin. I'm going to open up the whole house to enable my teenager to go to the bathroom and brush her freaking teeth and go to the toilet and before she goes to bed. And then I'm going to close the house and we're going to shiver all night long. All night long.
And they've just
all night.
duct tape her
All
door
night.
shut.
All night long. All right, team. It's been great. We'll see. I don't know what's happening tomorrow night. I'll certainly be here. I might have a guest with me as well. We'll see if Donald Trump gets arrested tomorrow. That'll be the big news of the day. And other than that, we'll catch you for another edition. There's no other messages there you want to get out? We've done them all. Everyone's happy.
I starred so many. It's
Okay.
massively outpaced our
All right.
conversation.
All right. See you, team. Catch you tomorrow night from 9. Hooroo.
Cheers, folks.